Thank you for tuning in and welcome to CTO Talk. I'm your host, Matt Ferrari. On this 30-minute program, we're going to discuss the issues, challenges, and opportunities that are impacting healthcare technology. You can follow the show on Twitter at hashtag CTO Talk or me by following at @MPFerrari on Twitter. For this episode, I'm going to be talking with Callidus Health, which was co-founded by Dr. Ganesh, Elangovan, and Gerrit Adams. Together, they created a cloud-based clinical communication solution that is speeding medical care back to patients in need, all while securing PHI in the process. As I thought about this solution, I felt like it addresses a huge gap in data security, picturing PHI that's in transit from call centers to doctors. They do that by using a system that they call their Callidus CareLink system. It's built fully on top of Amazon Web Services. It captures the recording of a patient's call, transcribes it, and then links it to the right physician. It then labels and structures the data and does it all on this fully cloud-based platform using iOS or Android, which allows it to ultimately have nothing that lives locally on a device or on a machine. It's a smart solution, and I felt like it securely speeds information of images and information to doctors so that patients can quickly get the help they need. So let's jump right in with Ganesh talking about the challenges his company faces in educating clinical practices on the risk with their call centers.
I think the education isn't so much in explaining to clinicians, especially, the value of the workflow, because they know their own workflows specific to pediatrics or neurosurgery or what have you.
Sure.
I think the larger part of the education that we engage in is speaking more to the security side and just the general common sense of if you're using 3 or 4 different solutions to try to accomplish one, goal, that's really not a good use of your time where you can choose one solution that's really fitting exactly what you need. And I think that's the part of the education that comes into play.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. As I think about those clinicians, I'd love to know a little bit more about your typical customer or the kind of the customer dream for you guys. Who is the customer profile that you guys service?
Good question. We really service a range of clients, ranging from, we actually have 2 solutions that the company focuses on. One is for the outpatient practice-based offices, and the other solution is more the healthcare enterprise setting deployments. On the former, we serve everything from single doctor, small offices like a solo doctor in pediatrics or family practice, all the way up to large multi-specialty groups that run their own ambulatory surgery centers. So we really cover the range of small to large, simple to complex with our outpatient clinic solution. And on the inpatient health enterprise side, we have adapted that solution to fit the larger practices where they have multiple offices and have a more enterprise need. But the second solution is focused more on the hospital formal inpatient setting, where there's a lot of complexity, a lot of different departments, different call schedules, and different needs. And we're able to accommodate all that complexity across, let's say a tertiary care medical center or a teaching hospital in the one solution that would replace 3 or 4 existing solutions.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking about some of the providers and large solutions that I work with myself. I know that there's tons of systems out there that typically they don't communicate with one another and extremely difficult to use. So I know to that end, doctor efficiency, as well as patient engagement are really hot topics with those folks. Would you mind telling me a little bit about CareLink and your product portfolio and the approach to make that experience an improved one?
Definitely. CareLink is the clinic outpatient doctor-patient communication solution. And the way we handle doctor efficiency there is the current state of affairs is that they're usually making, practices making call schedules via a, Excel spreadsheet or some sort of template. There's an answering service involved. Switching of call results in dropped, messages, questions of who's on call. a lot of delays and frustration in the system. Our CareLink solution eliminates all that by pulling in the best in industry call schedule management platform built right into CareLink, couples that directly to communications. So it's no longer two solutions or having multiple hands in the mix. And through doing that, we really take the handoff drop out of the equation. And as far as the patient engagement, built into the CareLink solution, coupled to that clinical workflow of the call schedule and that mission critical delivery of messages, we do have a patient-facing application that's optional for the practices to deploy, where patients who are looking for going beyond the portal, the routine sort of, I need to schedule an appointment, look up the lab result, or send a message to my doctor that who knows may get answered in a week. It might take a month or it might take 2 days. We actually couple live communications with patient-facing application to do things like live text chatting with the on-call physician, sending secure emails back and forth between different physicians and the practices to the patients. And secure photo attaching has been a very big hit for our solution, where a lot of practices use it differently. Neurosurgery, surgical subspecialties look at what does a surgical wound look like post-op. If a patient can get me photos securely, I can make a better decision on what this wound needs as far as care. Does it have to come in? Something to wait for tomorrow? For the pediatrician side is the kind of opposite. They're looking at, does a cut need stitches? Does a rash look like it needs to come in for an urgent appointment? So a lot of different solutions give you these capabilities in bits and pieces, but our specialty is really coupling all of these different capabilities into that single practice clinical workflow in the one application. Doctors don't need to leave the CareLink application to accomplish all their communication needs, whether it's voice, whether it's text, whether it's secure photos.
Wow. Yeah. So as I think about that, a lot of what I do is focus on building out security and compliance for various EMRs and EMR interfaces. And I don't think patients really understand that the back end is incredibly complex. Thinking about the Epics, the Cerners, the Allscripts out there, and all of the back end and complexity it takes not only to make those things secure and compliant, but ultimately even how a practitioner corresponds with a patient is incredibly difficult. So I would think that the use case there is really, really easy to explain to the masses.
Yeah, and I think one of the core use cases for CareLink is the complete answering service replacement. And the way that we handle that is by setting up groups with their own designated numbers to forward to after hours. They get to have their custom mailbox structure and menu structure. So it really captures the clinical workflow of that practice, whether it's a peds practice that needs 4 mailboxes. We handle some large orthopedic groups that have at any given time 19 to 25 providers on call. And to be able to handle inbound patient calls, have a very clear menu structure where they get routed to the right place, get to leave their messages. We then escalate those messages into mission critical alerting for the on-call provider. Our error rate is something on the order of 1 out of 1,000 calls end up in the wrong place, so it's extremely low. And part of all this is record capture. So once that patient calls in, they're not delayed in getting to the right physician. The physician gets a notification and escalates, so they're going to respond a lot faster. And then calling back is right through our CareLink application too. And the underlying structure of all this is we're capturing all this data that was previously happening over, fragmented systems. So an answering service might text you a message, and putting PHI in, there's obviously a HIPAA security issue. With our system, everything from an inbound call to the routing to the right doctor, checking their response time, and even being able to record the outbound call the doctor is making to the patient, and labeling and structuring all this data in a human readable format is where the CareLink system really shines.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I do remember that our very first conversation was around the capability of eliminating kind of that old school call center pager model. So I see that as incredibly valuable as well. I think about Callidus Health, and I think, you've chosen cloud technology to help drive your innovation specifically for healthcare. Could you give me some insight into how the technical architecture works? You've mentioned security quite a bit. I'd love to learn more and allow the audience to kind of understand the technical guts of the platform.
Yeah. So we have been purely cloud-based since the inception. There's other companies in the space who need a on-site machine running their own applications to be able to bridge communications between, let's say, the hospital and their own systems. We really wanted to cut through that. So we focused on really making this a true cloud platform. The client devices are iOS or Android devices. The administrative side is through which is accessible if you have a Mac. You can see all the 4 major browsers. And everything that we do is, nothing lives on the device locally, and that's always been the way that we've done that. Additionally, in terms of the hosting requirements, we looked at multiple different options, and we actually were with a different hosting provider prior to Clear Data experience. And we really needed something that was going to deliver the throughput, have that performance, uptime, and that support requirement. So Clear Data really fit the bill for us when we were looking right before our go live back in 2015. But Gerrit, do you have anything else to add on the cloud hosting architecture side?
No, I think it's been a tremendous advantage for us, though. There aren't many cloud-based platforms out there, and I think it's where healthcare is moving from a technical standpoint. So the one thing you might want to talk about, Ganesh, is how we don't ask voice over IP for our calls.
Yeah, that's a good point. So for all our phone calls, what we do is we actually use ShoreTel as our platform level partner for all of our telecommunications sections. So inbound calls, outbound calls, et cetera. Because we're making real phone calls over real phone lines, we're not dependent on data quality connections. So I think that ties into the cloud model of looking for who's the best solution partners to have in each space. Some companies do the telco the telco side in-house, and they try to do voice over IP, and I think they suffer greatly because of it. We really look to who's the best in each industry to partner with and build things on their cloud platforms. So I think every solution we looked to work with was all cloud-based as well.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. As I was thinking about some of your response, I think about some of my experiences in healthcare, and it's scary to think, you mentioned local device and also kind of the ShoreTel model, but excellent models from an architecture perspective, but truly scary to think that there are still healthcare organizations and healthcare records that probably don't even know that they are indeed storing PHI on a device. And, I have the privilege of working with other organizations kind of in other verticals within healthcare that are trying to solve it in a similar architectural fashion where, they're building mobile or SaaS EMR applications that don't store anything on the iPad or on the Android device. So we can make sure that, there's no kind of even simple things, even like theft. So it's interesting to think that you guys have thought that through from the very beginning. Was cloud always a consideration as you built the organization, or was this kind of a progressive thought as you guys thought about security?
I think this was from the inception, and the reason was we've, in my experiences in the clinical space, things like Mobile Iron or Citrix, their mobile device management solutions have, been part of the mix at some of the places that I've worked at or trained at. And I think a lot of those solutions, they're not really solving a problem, because if you're going with a vendor for secure communications, but then you need to add another vendor on top of that to do your mobility management, that was something that we wanted to move away from. We wanted to have mobility management, all those granular controls baked right into the platform. So I think just from experience of being at these places and experiencing how these solutions worked, we definitely kept an eye on from the ground up. We wanted to have all the security, that granular control built right into the cloud, the way we manage our users and manage the data.
Makes sense. I think a lot about things like identity and access management and ultimately how to manage the users, how to make sure that everything's secure, compliant, and really built from, a privacy model from the get-go. I'd love to just learn a bit more, if I could, as you think about security, privacy, compliance, obviously communication really at the root of it. How do you make sure, how do you think about capturing all those communications while following all those compliance and reg, which, I live in the world where, I have to think about, GDPR and HIPAA and GXP and all of the regs as they continue to evolve and change. How do you guys keep up with that, and how do you guys approach that, that kind of rigor, if you will?
Yeah, very good question. I think a central part of that is working with the clear data team. So getting those quarterly notices of there's something that needs to be patched in your environment, there's the routine quarterly update. That helps us keep kind of that stuff over to the experts. So we're not worrying about patching our environments or keeping a track of the latest threats that are out there. And we really like that interaction where, if something comes up, we know that Clear Data's on top of it, and they're going to give us a call, and we're going to schedule a patching session and bring everything up to date. One of the other kind of interesting ways that we work is we really don't do anything outside of the Clear Data environment. So even our test machines, our stage machines, and obviously our production machines are all within Clear Data. So we really don't worry about having any data whatsoever sitting outside of an environment, or worry about things that are sitting on local machines, even within the company. So we really make an effort to make sure everything is in the cloud, nothing is local. So I think we cut down our exposure to potential incidents or problems with data capture, data being disseminated or accessed appropriately. And that's just been kind of the way we've worked since the beginning, and it's been very easy with Clear Data to operate in that method.
Okay, that makes sense. If you're just tuning in, I'm Matt Ferrari of CTO Talk, and you're talking to both myself as well as Ganesh and Gerrit, the two founders of Callidus Health. I think about some of the thoughts that you just shared, and Clear Data aside, just a note for the audience: the real reason for cloud providers that focus on healthcare and life sciences and similar should be to get out of your way. And, as I think about the use case for Callidus, it really should be focusing on building that better patient engagement and secure communication experience, really focus, on how to make it easier for healthcare and clinician and those kind of organizations really adopt those technologies. Thinking about the future of Callidus Health and your platform, what technologies or services are you guys looking to adopt?
Excellent question. To touch on what you just talked about and then moving over to the question, one other thing about the security aspect that I think a lot of organizations miss is, we've talked to very large hospital systems, covering with 4,000, 5,000 physicians, multi-campus systems, and I don't think they have a very good grasp of where their security deficits lie. So they focus on, the EMR or their data center. And for instance, there's a large client that we're talking to that, handles patient data coming through a third-party answering service. This third-party answering service storing patient names, dates of birth, phone numbers, and other PHI on their own machines at this answering service system. And then they're unsecurely texting this information out to the doctors for these patients who are employees of the health system. And when we had that discussion, it was a little bit eye-opening to see the level of, lack of realization of basically all their PHI that partially is contained in the EMR, floating around in third-party servers and applications that they have no control over. So that's definitely been a very eye-opening thing for us as we have these discussions on the security side of getting people to really look at the scope of where security issues really lie. I think they go through the surface layer, but they're not understanding where other deficits could come around to be, a liability. But to transition to the next question, Matt, as far as future capabilities, there's a couple of really interesting things we're doing with data capture. And one of those has to do with the ability to analyze both inbound patient calls and the conversations doctors are having with patients and look for keywords and be able to score, let's say, the appropriateness of how quickly was a patient call for a certain subject attended to, and did the responding physician say the correct things, and then be able to push those communications one step further with that workflow of the doctor, let's say the cardiologist, saying, okay, I'm answering the patient's question overnight, but this patient was a recent discharge. How do I push this patient over into the right protocol that they might need follow-up with, let's say, the discharge planning team or readmission reduction team? So I think hospitals are looking at these workflows, and we're building the platform to accommodate specialized workflows to target problem areas. And that's one of the future areas of growth.
Yeah, that's actually a bit humbling to think about that direction where you're going. To follow up on the security component, I'm lucky enough to be part of a lot of security risk assessments where you walk into a doctor's office or a clinic or even a large hospital and do a risk assessment to understand how vulnerable are they when it comes to various security risks in the data center or in their doctor's office or wherever they store data from a PI perspective. And you're fascinatingly correct, at least from my observation. Most healthcare organizations don't quite understand how the back end works. Where does the data go? Where does it live? Does it only live in that place? How does PHI expire? When does it expire? Where do communications go? How are notes taken and stored appropriately? Where do PACS images go? All those kind of things. And even as I'm thinking about your platform and the ability, as you guys said, to be able to, securely send, transmit even images, and feel, assured that you're doing it in a secure manner, in a compliant manner. To be honest, that solves so many problems, even in a business I didn't even expect to talk to you guys about today, right? In those kind of security risk assessment where the organization's probably trying to do things like gain meaningful use, to comply with meaningful use, to really not suffer the consequences of an audit of not being compliant. So I think the direction you're going is, to be honest, pretty humbling from my perspective because I've seen some scary stuff out there. My last question is really around the patient side of the equation. Where do you guys see technology playing a role in the future down the line of how a patient and doctor interact?
Excellent question. But what's interesting about the current state of affairs in the perceived direction is somehow fitness trackers and other consumer-ish devices are somehow going to be gathering data. Apple Health Kit's a big push right now, and it's going to be giving more information to your doctors that's somehow going to help them. The reality of it is the doctors really don't want extra information, especially information from consumer devices that's not actionable. They're already overloaded. They're cramming a lot of patient visits in a short amount of time. And I think that's not the direction things are going in. I think the direction is you're looking at places that, let's say, have rolled out a large EMR with a portal. They're finding their portal utilization rate is 10% less. Patients are not happy because they're not getting their portal emails attended to. They're not able to get questions answered. And they themselves admit the portal is really good only for a couple of things. The direction we're going in is to really take that patient need or demand side and satisfy it with a clinical workflow-enabled solution where things like live text chatting, secure photos, not waiting for hours or days or weeks for a message to get answered, but having everything coupled to that workflow is the direction I think places have to go in if they want to meet, HCAP score needs to, have them at a certain level, the patient satisfaction becoming an increasingly important part of the equation. And I think also from the insurer standpoint, the patient loyalty of if I'm not getting good service, 25 years ago, well, it's my doctor and I'm stuck with them for life. I think today it's a much different landscape, and you're seeing, concierge practices and other upstarts in the ecosystem say, oh, patient demand is important, patient satisfaction is important. If I can do it better, I'm going to be able to take some of these patients away and support, my own model. And CareLink really moves to that direction where it's putting all this under the control of the clinician, giving the clinician that workflow built right in, and then all that record capture. And I think the record capture part of it's very important from a medical legal standpoint, where groups that get, lawsuits and, have other sorts of liabilities, when they're working with CareLink, they know that everything that happens on the platform is clearly captured, labeled, and structured. So whether it's a question about a care episode a year ago, a month ago, or 6 years ago, we're going to have that immediate answer for that practice.
Thank you. That is incredibly powerful. I think even my own kids, and I think about the future of communication and simplification, but also quick, easy access to data is just going to be so critical as we think about better patient engagement, better patient outcomes. So thank you very much for talking with me today, Ganesh and Gerrit, and to our listeners, thanks for being here. If you have a comment about today's episode, please check out and follow hashtag CTO Talk on Twitter. You can learn more about CTO Talk at www.healthcarenowradio.com or at cleardata.com. I am Matt Ferrari, and until we talk again, have a good week.